Have you ever stopped to think about the power your words, your choices, and your heart have over your own life? Proverbs 15 is a chapter that opens spiritual and practical windows, revealing secrets that can transform the way we live. It's not just an ancient text, but a timeless manual that teaches us how to face days of affliction and turn them into banquets of hope. Right from the beginning, we are confronted with truths that shake the core of our being. The Bible shows us that it is not enough to simply live, we must live with wisdom. Every word, every reaction, and every decision carries eternal weight. Proverbs 15 calls us to see beyond the obvious and realize that life is not defined by circumstances, but by how we choose to respond to them. This chapter is a true school of maturity. It teaches us to cultivate discipline, speak with wisdom, live with joy, and walk paths that please the Lord. It is not about magical promises, but about practical principles that, if applied, can change destinies. In each verse, God shows us that the secret of life lies in aligning heart, mind, and actions with His truth. The beauty of Proverbs 15 lies in the contrasts it presents. On one side, the mouth of the fool, the afflicted heart, the abominable ways. On the other, the wise tongue, the joyful heart, and the righteous home that prospers. It is as if life offers us two paths, one of ruin and one of fullness. The decision lies before us, and the consequences are inevitable. This text also reveals that true prosperity is not found in possessions, but in principles. The home of the righteous flourishes because it is built on solid foundations, while the life of the wicked crumbles because it lacks them. Joy is not in external circumstances, but in the content heart that sees each day as a feast. Wisdom, in turn, is not in knowing everything, but in always seeking to learn. By diving into Proverbs 15, you will not only find advice for daily life, but also spiritual keys for living with balance. It is an invitation to deep reflection. How have I used my words? How have I reacted to correction? How have I nurtured my heart? These questions lead us on a journey of inner transformation, so get ready. What you will discover here is not just theory, but a lifestyle. It is a call to align your mouth, your mind, and your heart with God's wisdom. Because in the end, what truly matters is not what we achieve outwardly, but who we become inwardly. Proverbs 15 is a mirror that shows us who we are and who we can be if we embrace the Lord's wisdom. Before we continue, if you enjoy our videos and feel that they have blessed your life, like and comment. Even if it's just an amen, this makes a huge difference for this content to reach more people and impact lives. If you are not yet subscribed, take this opportunity to subscribe, turn on notifications, and share with your loved ones. This way, YouTube will get to know you better and recommend even more videos like this to help you on your faith journey. Help spread this message of faith and hope. Each like, comment, and share strengthens this work, which we do with all our heart to build up your life. Together we can reach even more hearts. Continuing, there are moments when heated discussions seem to take over, and anger rises like a wave, ready to consume everything. In such times, Proverbs 15 reminds us that a gentle answer can calm the storm. It's not just about avoiding confrontation, but consciously choosing the path of peace. Gentle words have a therapeutic power. They disarm the aggressor, calm the environment, and preserve relationships that could be destroyed by one single outburst of rage. Responding gently requires more than intelligence. It requires self-control. Anyone can return aggression with aggression, but few have the greatness to control emotions and respond with serenity. This self-control does not mean weakness, but spiritual and emotional maturity. It is the awareness that by answering gently, you are planting seeds of peace and not fueling the fire of discord. When someone bursts out with harsh words, the natural expectation is to receive the same in return. But when the response is gentle, it breaks that cycle of hostility. It's like extinguishing a spark before it turns into a wildfire. Not only does this surprise the attacker, but it also creates space for reason to return to the conversation. Gentleness has the power to restore balance where chaos once reigned. The secret lies in understanding that the goal of a conversation is not to win over the other, but to preserve the bond. A gentle response does not seek to humiliate, but to rescue. It does not want to prove who is right, but to show that the relationship is more important than temporary pride. In this way, it builds bridges instead of walls, strengthens ties instead of destroying them, and transforms enemies into potential allies. Furthermore, responding gently is a form of leadership. The one who remains calm in the heat of conflict inspires trust. People tend to respect those who do not lose control. It is a quality that distinguishes the wise from the foolish. While the fool reacts impulsively, the wise govern their emotions and redirect circumstances. This behavior establishes natural authority without the need for imposition. It is important to remember that a gentle answer is not passivity. It can be firm, clear, and objective, but wrapped in serenity. It is possible to confront mistakes, correct wrongs, and set boundaries without raising one's voice or wounding with words. Tone of voice, choice of words, and body language communicate just as much as the content itself. Wisdom lies in uniting firmness and gentleness in a balance that transforms. Finally, applying this truth daily brings immeasurable benefits. At home, it prevents unnecessary arguments. At work, it preserves unity. In relationships, it builds trust and respect. When you decide to respond gently, you are declaring to the world that your inner peace is not for sale. This biblical principle is more than a communication technique. It is a lifestyle that protects your soul and builds up those around you. Words are like seeds. Once spoken, they germinate and produce fruit. The wise tongue chooses each expression carefully, transmitting knowledge, hope, and direction. In contrast, the foolish tongue rushes to speak, spreading confusion and wounds. Proverbs 15 makes it clear that the way we use our words reveals the quality of our hearts. Those who cultivate wisdom do not speak to impress, but to build up and enlighten. The wise tongue has a multiplying effect. A well-placed word can transform someone's mood, ignite a new purpose, or even prevent a disaster. It is compared to a fountain of knowledge, one that never runs dry because it is rooted in truth and discernment. Every piece of wise advice shared is like a light shining in the darkness, guiding uncertain steps to a safe path. Meanwhile, the foolish tongue acts in the opposite way. It does not care about consequences. It speaks without thinking, disregarding the impact of its words. How many lives have been destroyed by slander, exaggerations, or cruel sarcasm? The tongue without wisdom becomes a dangerous weapon, able to cut deeper than a sword. That is why the value of the wise tongue lies in preventing damage that is often irreparable. The difference is in the motivation. The wise do not speak to manipulate, but to teach. They do not seek self-promotion, but clarity. Their lips are governed by the fear of the Lord, and therefore every word carries the weight of truth. The fool, however, speaks to draw attention, to appear important, but his words reveal emptiness and superficiality. The wise tongue, on the other hand, brings depth and consistency. Another important aspect is that the wise tongue is not limited to great lessons. It is also shown in small gestures, a sincere compliment, a word of encouragement, a phrase of comfort. These are seemingly small seeds, but they can bloom into great changes in someone's life. The impact is not in eloquence alone, but in the truth that accompanies every word spoken. Cultivating a wise tongue requires discipline. It means learning to listen before speaking, to weigh before opining, and to discern before advising. This self-control protects against impulsive reactions and strengthens credibility. Over time, people will seek advice from those who speak with wisdom, because they recognize that their words are not driven by emotion, but by conviction. Therefore, the value of the wise tongue is incalculable. It can build generations, restore hearts, and even open doors of opportunity. Entire societies can be transformed when leaders, parents, and teachers speak with wisdom. Thus, Proverbs 15 challenges us to reflect, what have our words produced? Confusion or clarity? Wounds or healing? The use of the tongue is a daily choice, and on it depends the future of many. Daily life often makes us believe there are hidden moments, secrets no one will ever uncover. Yet Proverbs 15 reveals that the eyes of the Lord are in every place, watching both the good and the evil. This truth reminds us there is no dark corner beyond His presence. He sees hidden intentions, secret actions, and even thoughts we never put into words. Nothing escapes His perception. This reality can bring fear to some and comfort to others. For those who live in evil, the thought of a God who sees all is a warning to reconsider their ways. Masks and facades may fool people, but before God, no disguise holds up. For the righteous, however, knowing that the Lord's eyes follow their steps is a source of safety. He not only observes, but also guards and protects. God's eyes are more than surveillance, they are constant care. Like a loving father who never loses sight of his child, the Lord watches to guide and rescue from danger. His watchfulness is not oppressive, but protective. It is the assurance that even when no one else is around, He is present. This awareness reshapes how we behave and even how we face challenges. Living with the awareness of God's constant presence produces integrity. True character is not shown when people are watching, but when no one else sees. It is then that we remember the eyes of the Lord are there. This awareness leads us to make the right decisions, not out of fear of people, but out of reverence for the Creator. Wisdom begins with understanding that He is always watching. This principle also helps us handle injustice. How often do we see evil prosper and think no one notices? Proverbs reminds us that God sees everything. No act of wickedness will go unpunished, and no act of kindness will be forgotten. The righteous can rest, knowing there is a judge who sees it all and, at the right time, will bring justice. Moreover, God's omniscience calls us to live transparently. Those who walk in the light have nothing to hide. Knowing that God sees can be liberating. No need for masks, no need to pretend perfection. We simply live with sincerity, because truth always stands before His eyes. Thus, the awareness that the eyes of the Lord are everywhere calls us to live differently. It is not merely about avoiding evil, but about cultivating an upright life that honors His presence, is living as if we are always before Him, not out of obligation, but out of love. Proverbs 15 is clear. When we acknowledge that God sees all, we live with greater responsibility, peace, and hope. The words that come out of our mouths carry the power to shape atmospheres. Proverbs 15 compares the healthy tongue to a tree of life, showing that speech can bring healing, hope, and restoration. When we use our mouths to build up, we become like rivers that refresh in times of drought. This source of life is within everyone's reach, but it requires awareness, choosing words that lift up instead of tear down, that heal instead of wound. Speech is a direct reflection of the heart. A tongue that brings life flows from an interior nourished by wisdom and the fear of God. In contrast, a perverse tongue filled with bitterness and resentment is like poison that contaminates everything around it. The contrast is clear. On one side, a tree of life. On the other, roots of destruction. Every phrase can be either a seed of peace or a thorn of pain. When someone chooses to speak gently, they transform environments. A word of encouragement in the midst of despair can reignite faith in someone who had lost all hope. Wise speech is not limited to elaborate advice, but includes timely silence, which avoids harm and allows space for reflection. The source of life is not in the quantity of words, but in their quality. The power of words is so deep that it can impact generations. A true compliment can mark a child positively for a lifetime. Likewise, harsh words spoken in anger can leave scars that never fully fade. That is the responsibility Proverbs reminds us of, to consciously choose whether we will be a source of life or of pain. The tongue that brings life is also strategic. It knows the right moment to speak, the right tone, and the right measure. It does not waste energy on gossip or accusations, but focuses its strength on words that bear fruit. This ability is not innate but cultivated. It is the result of discipline, self-control, and above all, connection to God's wisdom. Practically, being a source of life in speech means turning every conversation into an opportunity to edify. At home, at work, or in casual encounters, there is always room to bring hope. A tongue that heals is rare in a world where so many are wounded by criticism, rejection, and words of discouragement. To be such a voice of life is to be an instrument of God Himself. Finally, understanding this principle changes our perspective. We no longer speak just for the sake of speaking, but with the awareness that every word is a seed. The choice is ours, to nurture lives or to suffocate them. Proverbs 15 challenges us to be channels of life through our speech. If our words are guided by wisdom, we will be like fruitful trees that feed, heal, and inspire everyone who crosses our path. Discipline is like a strict teacher, yet indispensable. In Proverbs 15, we learn that rejecting correction is foolishness, while accepting it leads to wisdom. Many resist discipline because it feels uncomfortable, but it is in that very discomfort that character is forged. The heart that opens itself to instruction is positioned for growth, while the one that despises correction remains trapped in ignorance. Discipline can come in many forms, from family, from society, from the consequences of life itself, and most importantly, from God. In all of them, there is a pedagogical purpose. It is not arbitrary punishment, but direction to correct the path. The problem is that human pride resists admitting mistakes. That is why accepting discipline is a mark of maturity and humility. When someone ignores correction, they end up stuck in cycles of repetition. Mistakes become habits, and habits shape destiny. Discipline, as painful as it may seem in the moment, breaks that cycle. It is like the pruning of a tree. The cut hurts, but it prepares for new fruit. The wise understand that present discomfort is the seed of future prosperity. Furthermore, discipline not only corrects, but also protects. Many times, it keeps us from falling into deeper abysses. Reproof can prevent irreparable losses, emotional disasters, and even spiritual ruin. That is why Proverbs 15 presents discipline as a tool for life. Whoever rejects it despises not only human counsel, but also the voice of God speaking through it. In practice, discipline manifests itself in everyday life, learning to control words, manage emotions, handle resources, and organize time. These constant adjustments shape people capable of thriving. The absence of discipline leads to wasted gifts, talents, and opportunities. Discipline, then, is an investment in the future, a daily construction that supports great achievements. Another important point is that discipline generates respect. Disciplined people become references because they inspire trust. They demonstrate balance and firmness in decision-making. This does not mean inflexible rigidity, but constancy in what is essential. Discipline guides life by principles, not by fleeting impulses. In this way, it separates the wise from the foolish, the winners from those who quit along the way. Therefore, to accept discipline is to open the door to true wisdom. There is no growth without correction, no victory without effort. Discipline is the track that keeps life moving in the right direction. Those who embrace this process learn to live with purpose, while those who reject it lose themselves in twisted paths. Proverbs 15 teaches us that greatness lies in accepting instruction and turning it into daily practice. House is more than walls and a roof. It is the reflection of the spiritual and moral life of those who dwell in it. Proverbs 15 affirms that in the home of the righteous there is abundance, while the dwelling of the wicked is marked by turmoil. This shows that true prosperity does not depend merely on material wealth, but on righteousness as the foundation. Where there is righteousness, there is order, peace, and direction. The home of the righteous becomes a place of safety. Even amid external struggles, peace reigns inside because God's principles are present. Prosperity in this context is not measured by luxury or abundance of goods, but by harmony among people, by wisdom guiding decisions, and by joy that cannot be bought. It is an invisible treasure, yet one that can be deeply felt. In contrast, the house of the wicked may appear successful on the outside, but inside is full of unrest. What is lacking is not resources, but peace. A heart far from righteousness opens the door to strife, division, and emptiness. Without the foundation of integrity, every achievement is fragile. It's like building a palace on sand. Sooner or later, it will collapse. The prosperity of the righteous does not mean an absence of problems, but the presence of wisdom to face them. When crises arise, the righteous find strength in God to keep the structure of the home steady. This is reflected in conversations marked by respect, in balanced decisions, and in actions that foster unity. Righteousness works as an invisible wall protecting against both internal and external threats. This reality also affects future generations. The righteous pass on principles that shape their children, and these values become an immaterial inheritance. More important than land or wealth is the legacy of character and the fear of the Lord. The prosperity of a righteous home goes beyond the present. It is a seed that blossoms in the future, bearing fruits of stability and wisdom in each descendant. On the other hand, the wicked household produces fruit of destruction. An environment of injustice and disorder corrupts relationships and undermines the family's future. Children raised amid quarrels and lies absorb patterns they will carry into adulthood. That is why Proverbs emphasizes the urgency of aligning the home with righteousness. What is at stake is not only the present, but the future of an entire lineage. Thus the message is clear. The true prosperity of a home does not come from outside, but from within. It is born of the fear of God, grows in the practice of justice, and blossoms in harmony among those who live there. Being righteous is not merely a title, but a daily practice that transforms environments. And when a house is built on this foundation, it becomes strong, blessed, and a testimony to all around it. Words carry an invisible but undeniable force. Proverbs 15 shows us that the mouth of the wise spreads knowledge, while the mouth of fools spreads folly. Every word spoken is like a stone thrown into a lake. It creates ripples that go far beyond the initial point. Too often we underestimate the effect of a phrase, yet it can change the course of a life forever, for good or for harm. A word of wisdom can open doors that seemed closed. It can bring clarity in confusion, courage in fear, and hope in despair. On the other hand, foolish words generate chaos, fuel conflicts, and plant seeds of destruction. Their impact does not remain in the moment of speaking, but extends over time, influencing relationships, decisions, and even destinies. The wise understand that speaking is a responsibility. They weigh their words before releasing them. They do not speak simply to be heard, but to build up. Their goal is not to impress, but to transmit knowledge that makes a difference. The fool, however, speaks impulsively without measuring consequences. His speech exposes his lack of discernment and often becomes the reason for his downfall. The impact of words also manifests in human relationships. A sincere compliment can heal deep emotional wounds, while a destructive criticism can cancel years of effort. The tongue holds the power to lift or to crush, to motivate or to discourage. That is why Proverbs calls us to reflect before speaking. Will what I am about to say bring life or death? Another essential aspect is that words shape environments. In the home, the tone of conversations determines whether it will be a place of peace or of tension. At work, the way leaders communicate can inspire entire teams or erode collective trust. In communities, speeches can unite multitudes under a purpose or divide them into conflict. The impact goes beyond the individual and reaches entire groups. Words also reveal the inner source. A heart full of wisdom overflows with knowledge, while spiritual emptiness overflows with folly. This reminds us that it is not enough to change vocabulary. The source itself must be transformed. When the heart is renewed by truth, the mouth naturally becomes an instrument of life. Speech is the reflection of what is inside, not just of what one wants to project. Finally, to understand the impact of words is to embrace the calling to use them with wisdom. Every sentence can be an opportunity to edify, heal, and teach. If the mouth of the wise spreads knowledge, then we must strive to become such channels of wisdom in the world. Proverbs 15 invites us to transform our speech into a tool of life, always remembering that once words are released, they can never be taken back. Since ancient times, people have believed that offering something to God was enough to please Him. Yet Proverbs 15 teaches us that what attracts His heart is not the material offering, but a righteous life before Him. The Lord delights more in obedience and integrity than in empty rituals. The true sacrifice is a contrite heart and the practice of justice in everyday attitudes. This truth unmasks superficial religiosity. Many think they can compensate for wrong actions with external gestures of devotion, but God is not impressed by appearances. He looks beyond what is placed on the altar and examines the inner motivation. When life is inconsistent, no ritual sacrifice has value. What rises as a pleasing aroma before God is a life guided by righteousness. The sacrifice that pleases the Lord is practical. It is seen in treating others with respect, being honest in business, staying faithful in the family, and acting with compassion. These everyday choices reveal true spirituality. It is not about grand ceremonies, but about a life consistently aligned with divine principles. Worship, then, does not happen only in temples, but in every choice we make. This does not mean that offerings are useless, but that their value depends on the heart behind them. When a gift is given sincerely, out of love and gratitude, it becomes a genuine expression of worship. However, when it is used as a bargaining chip, it loses all meaning. What God desires is coherence between what is offered and how one lives. This lesson leads us to reflect on the motivation of our actions. Are we seeking to please people or to please God? The honest answer to this question defines the quality of our sacrifice. A righteous life may not earn human applause, but it wins divine approval. And in the end, that is the only approval that truly matters. Living rightly is also the greatest testimony we can offer. More powerful than any words is the example of a transformed life. People may doubt speeches, but they cannot deny the impact of consistent conduct. This is the daily sacrifice that inspires others to seek the same source of wisdom and justice. Therefore, Proverbs 15 reminds us that the sacrifice that pleases God goes beyond rituals. It lies in surrender of the heart, practical obedience, and consistency between faith and actions. The true altar is not made of stone, but of character shaped by justice. Those who live this way not only please God, but also experience the fullness of His favor and approval. Proverbs 15 teaches us that there are paths that are detestable before God. It is not only about external choices, but about a lifestyle that reveals a heart far from righteousness. The Lord rejects the conduct of the wicked because it sows destruction, corrupts relationships, and spreads injustice. What matters to Him is not appearance, but the direction of the heart. The righteous are loved because they seek to live according to truth. Abominable paths are marked by dishonesty, arrogance, and contempt for wisdom. Many try to justify them with excuses, but before God there are no masks. Evil may seem to prosper for a time, but its end is certain: ruin. The contrast is striking, for while the wicked build on sand, the righteous build on eternal foundations, and that is why they remain firm. It is important to note that such paths do not appear suddenly. They are the result of small, repeated choices over time. A heart that drifts from truth begins to tread crooked routes, often without realizing it. A lie here, an injustice there, and suddenly the direction has already been lost. That is why Proverbs warns us. We must guard every step, for every path leads to a destination. Wisdom lies in aligning life with God's principles. This does not mean absolute perfection, but a daily willingness to pursue righteousness. While the wicked cling to pride, the righteous humble themselves and acknowledge their need for guidance. This humility is what sets apart those loved by God from those who live in opposition to Him. Abominable paths not only affect those who choose them, but also everyone around them. Families are destroyed, societies are corrupted, and entire generations suffer the fruits of injustice. That is why God detests them, because He loves life and knows sin always produces death. His love for justice is also His protection over humanity. On the other hand, the path of the righteous is pleasing to the Lord. He delights in those who pursue truth, who practice good even under pressure, who prefer to lose temporary advantages rather than lose integrity. These are the ones who walk in light and enjoy divine favor. God's love for such a lifestyle is a demonstration that He values what promotes life and hope. Thus, Proverbs 15 challenges us to reflect, which path are we walking? The daily choice to practice good or evil reveals whether we are on the road of righteousness or on routes detested by God. It is not about external religiosity, but about internal alignment. The righteous are loved because they walk in truth, while the wicked are rejected for insisting on destructive ways. The choice is ours, but the consequences belong to God. Proverbs 15 warns that those who reject discipline and remain rebellious will face severe correction. A rebel is not just someone who makes mistakes, but someone who persists in them despite repeated warnings. His resistance to counsel leads him to an inevitable fall. The severity of correction does not come from God's cruelty, but from the natural consequences of choices made against wisdom. Rebellion is dangerous because it closes the ears to truth. When someone refuses to listen, they become a prisoner of their own ignorance. Even when clear warnings are given, they prefer to follow the path of self-sufficiency. The result is always the same: avoidable pain that becomes a late teacher. The rebel learns through hardship because he despised the instruction that could have spared him. This reality applies in every area of life. The young person who ignores parental advice experiences the weight of premature choices. The worker who disregards instructions reaps failure in his career. The person who rejects divine correction loses the protection of walking in truth. Rebellion creates a cycle of self-destruction that only humility can break. Harsh correction also serves as a warning to others. When someone suffers the consequences of rebellion, those around them are called to reflect. The pain of the rebel becomes a public lesson on the danger of disobedience. In this way, even punishment becomes a teaching tool, reminding everyone that wisdom lies in obeying willingly. It is important to emphasize, however, that God's correction, though harsh, is an expression of love. He prefers to discipline rather than abandon. Punishment is His way of calling the rebellious back before it is too late. When pain awakens the conscience, there is still room for repentance. Yet the more stubborn the heart, the harsher the consequences will be. Rebellion is born of arrogance, but discipline is born of humility. The one who accepts instruction demonstrates greatness, for they recognize their limitations. The one who rejects it reveals pride that will lead to downfall. Thus, the rebel is not punished only for his actions, but for the unyielding heart that refuses to change. It is this hardness that makes his correction equally severe. Therefore, the message of Proverbs 15 is clear: rebellion always carries a heavy cost. Those who despise correction will be disciplined painfully, while those who embrace it will grow in wisdom. The choice between learning through counsel or through pain is before each of us. The rebellious suffer, but the humble prosper. Life will be shaped by the path we decide to follow. Proverbs 15 reminds us that even Sheol and the grave lie open before the Lord. How much more the hearts of men? This means nothing escapes His attentive gaze. God not only observes our outward actions, but also examines the deepest parts of our being. He knows intentions, desires, and motivations we ourselves struggle to understand. Before him, there are no masks, no secrets. This reality calls us to transparency. Often we waste energy trying to maintain appearances before people, but before God, no disguise works. He knows both visible deeds and hidden motives. This is an invitation to live with integrity, seeking not human approval, but God's. True spirituality is born out of honesty before him. Knowing that the Lord examines hearts also helps us understand his judgment. He does not judge only what is seen, but the root behind each action. Two people may do the same deed, yet God views them differently depending on their motivation. One gift may be an expression of love, another merely an attempt at self-promotion. His gaze goes beyond the surface. This truth also brings comfort to those unfairly judged by others. How often are we misunderstood by people? Yet God knows the real intention. He sees hidden tears, unnoticed efforts, and silent prayers. When human justice fails, divine justice prevails. For the Lord weighs the heart and rewards according to truth. On the other hand, it is also a warning for those with wrong intentions. We may fool society, but we can never deceive God. Beautiful words and grand gestures cannot hide a heart full of pride, envy, or deceit. Sooner or later, what is hidden will be revealed. The Lord examines not to expose, but to correct and lead us to repentance. God's examination is also an expression of love. He knows us so deeply that he understands our needs even before we ask. His corrections are precise because he sees within, not only what is outward. Like a physician of the soul, he treats not just symptoms, but root causes. He does not simply see, he heals and transforms. Therefore, living with this awareness means choosing integrity as a lifestyle. Human applause is irrelevant if we are not right before God. He examines hearts not to condemn, but to align. When we embrace this truth, we experience freedom, for we realize we no longer need to pretend. We can be genuine before the Creator who knows us completely. Proverbs 15 teaches that the scorner does not seek wisdom and avoids the wise, for he cannot bear correction. The mocker prefers to live in arrogance, laughing at truth and despising counsel. He does not run away because he cannot understand, but because he does not want to be confronted in his vanity. His posture is not innocent ignorance, but deliberate rejection of the path of life. Scorn is a sign of deep-rooted pride. Those who mock wisdom reveal fear of losing their self-sufficiency. Such people would rather surround themselves with flatterers than with mentors who challenge them to grow. They keep their distance from the wise because proximity to truth is unbearable. Their escape is really an attempt to protect their comfort zone, yet this attitude brings inevitable consequences. The scorner may appear clever for a time, but his contempt for wisdom leads to ruin. Without guidance, he makes rash decisions and pays dearly for them. His isolation leaves him vulnerable, for he rejects the very people who could guide him. The mocking laughter that once seemed strength exposes itself as weakness. At the same time, this passage highlights the greatness of those who pursue wisdom. The wise do not fear correction. They value it. They understand that learning from others is the path to growth. Unlike the scorner, the humble draw near to the wise and by doing so, accumulate knowledge and fortify their lives. This willingness ensures their progress. Scorn is also dangerous because it poisons environments. A mocker within a community can discourage others from seeking truth. His irony corrodes, his disdain spreads distrust, and his attitude pushes away the fear of the Lord. That is why Proverbs repeatedly warns against this behavior. It is not just a personal flaw, but a collective threat. Practically, this teaches us to choose our companions wisely. Being close to scorners can erode our faith and weaken our pursuit of wisdom. Walking with the wise, on the other hand, is an investment that yields discernment and stability. The voices we decide to hear shape the direction we follow. Thus, Proverbs 15 challenges us to evaluate, are we like those who flee from wisdom or those who seek it with humility? Scorn may look like strength, but it is only a mask for insecurity. The sincere pursuit of truth requires courage and results in life. Each of us must choose to run from correction like fools or embrace it like those who long to grow. Proverbs 15 teaches that a joyful heart brightens the face, while sorrow crushes the spirit. This truth shows the connection between our inner state and how we present ourselves to the world. Joy that flows from within is reflected in every expression, every gesture, and every word. It is more than a passing emotion. It is a force that gives vitality and influences those around us. A joyful heart does not depend on ideal circumstances, but on a chosen posture toward life. It chooses to see opportunities even amid adversity. This joy is not superficial, but rooted in trust in God and constant gratitude. While sorrow drains energy and paralyzes, joy revives and propels us forward, even when the path is difficult. Inner joy acts like medicine for the soul. Modern studies confirm that joyful people face illness better, recover faster from crises, and maintain healthier relationships. Proverbs had already revealed this centuries ago. The disposition of the heart influences the whole body. A broken spirit weakens, but a joyful heart renews strength continually. Joy also has a multiplying effect. When someone lives with hope, they inspire others to believe as well. It's like light in a dark environment. A simple smile can change the day of someone weighed down by discouragement. A joyful heart is not selfish. It becomes a fountain that distributes encouragement and spreads confidence. In contrast, deep sorrow drains not only the one who feels it, but also those who live around them. Negative words, downcast expressions, and discouraged attitudes can contaminate entire environments. That is why caring for the heart is essential, not only for ourselves, but also for those we influence daily. A joyful heart is a blessing to self and others. This principle also reminds us that true joy is found in God. The world offers fleeting pleasures that quickly fade, but the Lord is the source of lasting joy. When we trust Him, we find reasons to give thanks even in struggles. It is this solid joy that sustains life, not dependent on external conditions, but on God's constant presence. Therefore, cultivating a joyful heart is a daily choice. It means deciding to look beyond problems, to give thanks for small victories, and to trust in God's care. This joy does not ignore difficulties, but faces them with hope. And in doing so, it transforms not only one's own life, but also the lives of all who have the privilege of walking alongside. Proverbs 15 reveals that the wise heart delights in seeking knowledge, while the fool feeds on folly. This distinction shows that wisdom is not a matter of chance, but of intentional pursuit. The wise are never satisfied with what they already know. They recognize there is always more to learn. Their delight is in expanding horizons and deepening understanding. The pursuit of knowledge requires humility. It means admitting we do not know everything and that others can teach us. The wise value every opportunity to learn, whether from experienced mentors, from observing nature, or even from their own mistakes. The fool, on the other hand, despises counsel, ignores instruction, and clings to personal opinions, even when proven wrong. True knowledge goes beyond information. It leads to transformation. The wise apply what they learn, turning theory into practice and reaping the fruit of growth. They understand that learning without application is wasted opportunity. That is why they seek not only to accumulate data, but to acquire discernment for making better decisions. The contrast is clear. While the wise grow daily, the fool stagnates. His food is folly. He finds satisfaction in what does not edify. He prefers shallow entertainment instead of investing in inner growth. This choice shapes his life. While the wise build a solid future, the fool heads toward ruin. Seeking knowledge also strengthens relationships. Those who dedicate themselves to learning develop empathy, communication skills, and the ability to understand others. They are better equipped to resolve conflicts and build bridges of connection. The fool, however, by despising wisdom, often destroys relationships with careless words and reckless behavior. Another essential point is that knowledge must be rooted in the right values. Accumulating information without moral direction is meaningless. True wisdom seeks not only to learn, but to learn what is good and just. That is why the Bible places the fear of the Lord as the beginning of knowledge. Without this foundation, all knowledge becomes empty or even dangerous. Thus, Proverbs 15 challenges us to cultivate the habit of lifelong learning. The wise delight in it because they see knowledge as a way to grow, to serve, and to glorify God. Every new lesson becomes a tool for living better and helping others. The fool, however, by feeding on folly, remains imprisoned in his own limitations. The choice is clear: pursue wisdom or settle for emptiness. Proverbs 15 reminds us that all the days of the afflicted are evil, but for the cheerful of heart life is a continual feast. This truth reveals the power of perspective. While some live enslaved by burdens, others manage to enjoy the journey with gratitude. Balance in life does not depend on the absence of problems, but on the ability to find meaning and joy amid circumstances. A balanced life is born from the choice to nurture the heart with contentment. Those who live in constant comparison always feel lacking, no matter what they achieve. But the grateful person perceives abundance even in small things. This posture does not erase challenges, but transforms how they are faced. The balanced heart finds rest where others only see despair. This balance also affects emotional and physical health. The afflicted, dominated by worry, live exhausted and worn out. Their heavy outlook makes every day a burden. By contrast, those who live with contentment experience resilience and renewal. Joy becomes fuel, renewing strength and giving energy to handle daily struggles. A balanced life is not the absence of struggle, but the presence of wisdom. It is knowing when to move forward and when to step back, when to speak and when to stay silent, when to persevere and when to wait. Such discernment can only come from a heart anchored in God, because He is the source of peace in the midst of chaos. Thus, balance is not merely a human skill, but a spiritual fruit. Another essential aspect is that balance becomes a testimony. People who live with serenity and gratitude inspire trust and attract others. Their example proves that it is possible to live fully even in hard times. They need no exaggeration or ostentation, for their inner joy is their greatest wealth. In contrast, an unbalanced life always leans toward extremes. Some drown in anxiety, others chase fleeting pleasures. The result is the same: emptiness. Biblical wisdom calls us away from extremes to seek the point of balance where true life unfolds. It is in that space that stability, contentment, and purpose are found. Therefore, the value of a balanced life is immeasurable. Those who cultivate gratitude transform every simple meal into a feast, every ordinary moment into a celebration. Balance protects us from being slaves to circumstances and allows us to live fully. Proverbs 15 invites us to such a life, not a perfect one, but a serene, wise, and joy-filled existence. We have reached the end of Proverbs 15, and it is impossible to leave unchanged. Each verse confronts us, each contrast forces us to reflect, and each principle invites us to live differently. This chapter is not about collecting knowledge, but about making choices that shape destiny. The challenge is clear. Use our tongues as trees of life, cultivate joy in our hearts, and walk paths that please the Lord. We have seen that words are never neutral. They carry life or death. Discipline, though uncomfortable, is a tool for growth. Righteousness builds homes that prosper, while rebellion tears down lives that resist correction. Joy strengthens the spirit, wisdom enriches understanding, and balance turns daily struggles into continual feasts. These truths are not mere theories. They are seeds that produce eternal fruit. Proverbs 15 reminds us of one central reality: God sees all. His eyes watch the good and the evil, and his gaze penetrates the deepest intentions of the heart. This is not meant to instill fear, but responsibility. If he sees everything, then we do not need to pretend. We only need to walk with integrity. His constant presence is protection for the righteous and a warning to the wicked. The contrast between the wise and the fool, the righteous and the wicked, runs through the chapter like a thread, and it leaves us with a choice. Which side will we stand on? Will we pursue wisdom that leads to life, or folly that leads to ruin? Balance, peace, and joy are not accidents. They are the results of conscious decisions made daily. More than ever, this chapter calls us to put wisdom into practice. It is not in great gestures, but in small decisions. How we respond to anger, how we receive correction, how we speak to others, how we nurture our hearts, that we prove whether we have embraced divine wisdom. Each choice builds a legacy for ourselves and for those who come after us. This conclusion is, in truth, an invitation to review our words, to accept discipline, to seek knowledge, and to cultivate joy. An invitation to align heart and mind with God, letting his wisdom shape us. An invitation to live not for appearances, but for essence. For it is essence that truly matters before the Lord. Proverbs 15 is not just another chapter of the Bible, it is a map showing us the difference between surviving on the surface and living with depth. If you embrace these principles, you will discover that even in the hardest of days, life can be a feast. The wise heart transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary, and the righteous, even in struggle, experience the fullness of God. That is the promise, the choice, and the life set before us.